Now time for Mommy Monday. There's a common and sometimes painful condition that's affecting millions of women nationwide, and it's called endometriosis. This is a common disorder that occurs when the uterine lining grows outside of the uterus, and it often goes misdiagnosed. But today, endometriosis advocate Meghan Rothschild is here to help educate us. Meghan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so you have been living with endometriosis for years before you even received a diagnosis.
Absolutely, yeah, probably 2 decades, but I was actually misdiagnosed for about 4 years. They kept thinking it was something related to my GI tract, and so I very well could have had endometriosis as early as my young teen years.
So they say sometimes you can develop it like as soon as your first period.
Yes.
And this is something that affects those in their prime childbearing years, right? Yeah. That's when the symptoms really start to develop.
Yeah, it actually affects 10% of women of reproductive age. So there's millions and millions of women who are suffering from this, and yeah, it's painful. In your opening when you said it can sometimes be painful, I can tell you it is very, very, very painful. And the only way to diagnose it is to actually undergo surgery, which can be really troublesome for a lot of women because I think doctors tend to, resist doing that and getting to that step. And so for me on a personal level, like I said, it took about 4 years of me constantly complaining and going in and going through a lot of different tests.
Wow. And, we always say that you have to be your biggest advocate. At the end of the day, even the experts sometimes, people are not communicating all together. Right. And you literally have to be taking your notes.
Yes.
Did you know what endometriosis really was up until that diagnosis?
I had no idea. I had never heard of it. And I remember sitting with my primary care physician, and he looked at me and he said, "I think you have endometriosis," but my pain was in my abdomen. And he said, that can happen, but I think we need to exhaust any stomach-related issues first. And that's why my journey really kind of spiraled into getting endoscopies, colonoscopies. Like I had to go for so many tests over and over again until finally I kept shouting from the rooftops, "I really think I have endometriosis." And it wasn't until I took my care to Brigham and Women's in Boston, Massachusetts, that the doctor looked at me and said, "I agree with you, and I think we need to do the surgery to diagnose you."
Oh, and Amy Schumer, comedian Amy Schumer, she has endometriosis, and she's certainly been also an advocate and on her social media platforms, posting videos, trying to get the word out there. She calls it a lonely disease. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's because there's not much you can do to help with the pain, and you're just in agony every month. And it's hard because I think people tend to dismiss women's reproductive concerns anyways, and then when we say we're in pain, we also kind of get dismissed. And so I do feel like I remember laying in bed one night and saying to my husband, "I think we need to go to the emergency room," because I didn't know what I had, but I just knew that there was something really wrong. And it's such a difficult thing to diagnose that I would agree with her.
Yeah, it says in addition to painful periods, other common symptoms of endometriosis include pain during intercourse, painful urination or bowel movements, cysts, infertility, and much more. So a lot of these symptoms, you can understand why this sometimes goes misdiagnosed because they're common symptoms for other things out there.
Absolutely, yeah. It's so difficult. There's no easy test. You can't get a blood test. You can't do an ultrasound scan. So I agree. I think a lot of doctors want to exhaust everything else before getting to that step of having to put someone under, because that's always the last resort.
And how have you felt after surgery?
I have been, I would say mostly 90% pain-free since my surgery. So what they do is they go in and they actually remove all of the cysts that are causing the pain. And since that surgery, which was about 5 or 6 years ago at this point, I have been mostly pain-free, which has been an absolute miracle.
That's amazing. So what would you say to women who are watching this right now and are experiencing some level of pain or maybe some other symptoms and maybe not as much pain, but it might be endometriosis?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I did was I tracked my pain, and it was very clear it was around my cycle, and that was sort of a clear indicator that it was reproductive related. And so I think that can be one of the biggest tools that you have, is start taking a journal and writing down when the pain is occurring in relation to your period, and bring that to the attention of the doctor, because that should narrow it down, like I said, to some sort of reproductive disorder, and then they can go from there.
Thank you so much, Meghan, for this information. It's so important to get out there for women to make sure that they are not alone. And again, you got to be your best advocate. And Meghan, you are a shining example of that. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much.